Hello everybody and welcome to the Danimal Weekly number 23. I am Dan Andrews, also known as the Danimal from thedanimalhouse.com. Today I got a question or a suggestion for a video on Twitter by Bricks42. So thank you for that. And he was wondering what are some of my personal coaching philosophies and what makes me more qualified to talk about these things than other people, or what makes me better than other trainers. I think a large portion of my strength lies in the fact that I'm very flexible. Most people you see nowadays, most gyms and trainers have very cookie cutter approaches. You'll see we have CrossFit. CrossFit is, although no uniform sort of programming methods around, but they still have this very cookie cutter approach with the classes and the general sort of conditioning and whatnot they have people do. The same thing goes for global gyms. Global gyms, any sort of personal training global gyms, very cookie cutter, standardized. It's like, oh, you want to do this? We'll put you into this template. And it's kind of at the personal trainer's whim, and whatever he learned in his online certification they paid $50 for is what you're getting. And then there is another also somewhat cookie cutter approach of, let's have you drink a gallon of milk and you're just going to squat a lot. There's those three big templates. It's kind of like Globo Gym, CrossFit, and then kind of in a rebellion and opposite reaction to that we have the barbell, drink a gallon of milk, get fat as shit, and squat. And I don't particularly fall into any one of them. And then I also have the academic sort of angle, which the exercise science, kinesiology community, their sort of thoughts on the whole thing as well. So I've got these four basic schools of thought, and I pull from all of them. I'm much more of the opinion that when you're training someone or someone comes into your gym or they come to you for help in the gym, it should be much more like, if you've ever gotten a tattoo, I feel like it should be much more to like a similar, getting a custom tattoo, that sort of process where you tell the person, the coach, what you want, what your goals are, what you want to achieve, and then we say, great, we'll sort of like fine-tune, we'll draw up this plan for you that's specifically tweaked towards the outcomes you want. And I've always thought that's how all gyms should be run, but no one runs a gym like that. No one does, as far as I've ever heard. And that's one of my big things I'm going to do when I open up my own gym once I get out of college. That's going to be a large part of the value I'm going to provide, is people do not want to put in the time, energy, and follow-up into assuring that the people that are paying them money are getting what they want out of their time there. And that's probably the largest problem that no one seems to want to face. Everybody just wants to come out with DVD products. Everyone just wants to come out with this, that, or the other thing to get rich fast or to be controversial and get a lot of popularity, even though you're full of shit and you don't know what you're talking about. So I think that's really what makes me different, is my sort of devotion to people. Like so many people on the internet that run other strength training sites and blogs and what have you are either overly complicated and technical to be useful. They bore the shit out of you with all sorts of anatomical and biomechanical descriptions that most general people don't care about and serves very little purpose. And then on the opposite end of that, you have people that don't give a damn about any of that and really have no clue what they're talking about and make no logical sense. So I think I fall in a sweet spot between those two, where I pay enough attention to the technicalities of everything to the point where it's applicable and useful. But I also have a more simplistic approach in the fact that I understand that getting people to where they want tends to be simpler in approach than what most people like to think it is. And coming back to what I was saying earlier about the blog, everybody with their different approaches and blogs, and kind of that's very popular, is taking things that are overly technical and making a lot of money on them. The more complicated you can make things, I think JP had a post about that, the more complicated you can make things, the more money you can make off of them, because it seems like you're saying something that other people can't say, when in reality you're just making it more confusing and convoluted so it seems unique or new. And what's funny about that is you have the people in the strength and conditioning community and personal trainers are so ungrateful for the people that support them and that they train and consult with and what have you. Like, I know specifically there are multiple people on the internet that supposedly do forms of consultations and whatnot that have many people asking for their help and willing to throw money at their feet, and they don't give a fuck. They really don't. They're too busy. They're doing other things. They're not focused on their craft or the people that care about them. And I think that's a shame. I think I've personally even contacted people just to see what they would have thought about certain situations and just get their opinions, and I'd pay them for it, and just it completely ignored, didn't know I messaged them, didn't know I tried to contact them, or didn't give a shit. And I think that's a shame. I think people that even have developed the following, much greater following than I have currently, that actually have like a captive audience that really want their help, and they don't give it to them the way they want it to. So I think that's another one of my strengths. I make myself so accessible. Anybody that ever shoots me an email, that ever wants my help, that ever shoots me a message on Facebook or Twitter, I sit down and I give them my time. Whether or not, if they pay me for it, or if they're just a good friend that needs some help, I'm always willing to work with people. I'm always willing to sacrifice my time to better people if I think they have a desire, like a real desire. If they're not just wasting mine and their time. I think if there's a desire there, I will most assuredly help anyone I can. But that comes around too, you know, people that I need help from every once in a while in different things, not necessarily strength and conditioning, but like with all my writing I've been doing, with editors and getting information in that, with the book I'm working on, people help me there too, because it's kind of this give and take where you help certain people and you get help back in other fields, which is kind of nice about that. And I think a lot of people, a lot of trainers, a lot of strength coaches don't realize that. I think a lot of the people that support them, their fans, their followers get shit on all too often, and I think I'm very good at not doing that. I'm very good at communicating with people and making myself accessible. And again, still being very flexible in my approach and not fitting people into these fucking cubby holes. Like, people aren't cubby holes, and it's not as complicated as you like think. I know, I was going to tell you guys a story. There's a bunch of guys in my gym, they're older now, they're in their 40s and 50s, but when they were kids, around my age, between younger than me, 17 to 20 or so, they used to live in one of their garages. They didn't have access to any of this technology. They didn't have access to all the blogs, the books, internet, any of this shit. They had like terrible ass magazines like Fitness and I don't even know what, Powerlifting USA and just stuff like that. Just those old magazines, and so they really had very little education about strength and conditioning and how to get big and strong. They just knew they needed to lift heavy weights, and that's all they wanted to do. And these guys who are not particularly genetically gifted or anything, had no great programming or great coaching, with fairly inefficient mechanics, were pulling 500-pound deadlifts frequently. We're bench pressing well into the high 300s and probably even the 400s. They were squatting. They weren't big on squatting, as most people who aren't coached on it are. But that just goes to show people that have very little information and very little advantage, simplistically just wanted to lift a lot of heavy weights. So all they knew they had to do is pick up that bar, and sure enough, without even having any of the preconceived notions about how hard that is, they were able to rep out 500-pound deadlifts like it was no big deal. And they talk about it now, and I make fun of them, talking about the good old days. But it's true. I think Dan John said, getting stronger is a lot more simple than people think. A lot of people make it much too hard. So, a little bit off topic there, but I think I bring that in. I bring you the useful information, the technical information to the extent it's worthy of your attention, and then I also combine it with that simplistic approach, and it tends to work really well with people that are willing to sit down and listen and sort of focus on the big picture stuff. And even now I've been focusing more on the mental aspects of training, just like how they had that very aggressive approach to those guys in the garage, just wanted to move heavy weights. It was so single-minded, and you can even call it dumb, but it worked very well for them. They didn't know any better. And I think there's some power to that. I think the mental aspect, my article I wrote for Elite FTS is coming up in 2 or 3 months, is how powerful the mental aspects of training are. And it's not just the navicular drop and fucking internal external rotation and this, that, and all this nonsense. There's much more to be gained out of focusing on the big picture things than to be critiquing the small picture things. So I think coming back to some more specific, like what do I have people do in the gym in my training philosophies, I think, like I said, it's very specific to the individual. I want to like custom craft like something very specific towards them and what they want. But then there are generalities that can be made about what people want. Like most guys just want to be big and muscular. Most girls just want to be sexy. There's variation within that scope, but there are some generalities that can be made. So I'm a big fan of obviously lifting weights. The big four: shoulder press, back squat, deadlift and bench press. Consistently moving heavy weight over time tends to have a very favorable appearance, and it tends to be very conducive with what most people want. So I'm a big fan of the barbell lifts. Conditioning is certainly a necessity, again based upon what they're looking for. So I like to stick with I don't want to say, it's not CrossFit, but like if you were to take CrossFit workouts and make them good, if you were to just keep them stupid simple, and then have the person, that's part of my big thing with CrossFit, is they take stupid ass movements to try and condition people, like heavy deadlifts and back squats and nonsense like that. So if you got rid of all that stupid bullshit and you just stuck with very good conditioning tools like running, kettlebells, the typical kind of cardio stuff, rowing, all that sort of thing, but combine it again with like great prowler, kettlebells, gymnastics, calisthenics, those sort of things. But keep it very simple, stupid, and don't go crazy with it. Try to keep it short for people. I don't want it to become a chore. I want it to be exciting and engaging, because again, that's a big part of training, is keep people interested and focused on what they're doing and not letting them get sidetracked because it's too difficult or because you're having them do all this extraneous shit. Another big thing, I do like mobility. I think mobility is important. I know I've cured like just stupid aches and pains that I think most people would be walking around with had I not done it. So I think that's another big thing a lot of people are missing, is that mobility aspect of getting people moving, certain like physical therapy exercises and drills that you can do to just sort of get rid of all these little aches and pains that a lot of people have. I think, again, that's something though a lot of people go crazy with. I think that's largely overdone by the people that focus on it. I think they focus more on mobility than they actually do the training, which is ridiculous. I think mobility work is a welcome addition to training. It should be brief, but it should be very specific and focused in towards improving your quality of life and decreasing the amount of discomfort you're in. So I like using a lot of mobility work as well for that. I love mobility as a warm-up. I've always hated the idea of doing a workout for a warm-up. I think that's stupid. So I like to give people some very basic but effective mobility drills to do as a warm-up, because I think that just preps you for the whole, your whole training session and what have you. So like I said, it comes back all down to that idea of just taking the best of everybody else's stuff and taking like the cream of the crop in terms of techniques and approaches, and then that's what I've tried to bring to people and my approach and how I train people and what makes me better than perhaps the Globo gym trainer is. I have disseminated some of the greatest minds and greatest information of the strength and conditioning community into something practical, useful, and generally applicable to everybody, and it can be crafted in that way. So I hope that answers everybody's question, or that anybody is wondering about my specific approaches. Is generally what I do and how I think about things. So thank you guys for checking out the Danimal Weekly number 23. I am Dan Andrews. Hope to see you next time. Peace out.